We're Baby Shakes. You're watching Jet Lag Rock and Roll, Brooklyn edition.
I was born in Brooklyn. You gotta love your hometown, right? Brooklyn still has very distinct neighborhoods, a lot of small store owners, a lot of character in each area.
I love living in Brooklyn because it's really accessible. You get more of a neighborhood vibe that you don't necessarily get living in Manhattan.
Brooklyn is like a ever-changing place. There's always a new bar or restaurant to check out. There's lots of great bands popping up all the time. Also a lot of great DJs, a lot of great DJ nights to check out.
Brooklyn is fast, it's vast. Lots of diversity in action. There's always something to do. It's the city that really needs some sleep, but just can't seem to get any.
Amen. It's also a place that you can live and not have a car, so you can take the train pretty much anywhere you want in the city, and you have everything at your fingertips in Brooklyn. If you want to go to a museum, if you want to go to a park, the nightlife is probably some of the best I've seen anywhere I've lived. There's always fun concerts and things happening. You'll never get bored, that's for sure.
Coney Island is definitely at the top of my list for places to see and experience in Brooklyn.
Basically, I think it's the most authentic place left in New York since everything's been pretty much cleaned up.
Amazingly fun place, amazing vibe, and sort of unspeakable, amazing romantic notion about the whole thing. So much so that I even got married on the beach there.
I've been going there since I was a little kid. My father used to take me. I still do a ritual visit every spring or summer, at least one time, to ride the roller coaster, get a hot dog, and it's more than that. It's the ocean breeze, it's the view of the ocean, the huge sky.
It's really gritty and greasy. The beach is gross. You maybe don't want to go swimming in there, but the amusement park is really cool.
You got the Cyclone, the Wonder Wheel.
You could also go to the beach and get a thing called a nutcracker, where a gentleman will sell you an alcoholic beverage in like a little plastic container that's really good.
Drink a beer on the beach, walk around the boardwalk. There's always a lot of characters, fun people watching.
You still have a honky-tonk atmosphere, not as much as it used to be. It used to be much crazier, but they have maintained that. So Coney Island, best place to visit in New York or Brooklyn.
Plus, it's where the Warriors are from, so it's pretty badass.
Avoid the Coney Island whitefish at all costs.
The things that I love about Brooklyn are these like historical immigrant enclaves that have been there for over 100 years, like before any of us started hanging out in Brooklyn. And Brighton Beach is a really old Russian community, Russian, Turkish, Eastern European, and there's a great place called the Brighton Bazaar. If you go there, it's just kind of like the amazing groceries from all these different places. I'm Turkish, I love to get Turkish food there. There's a lot of like old Turkish and Russian bathhouses, dinner and shows, like all these crazy Russian caviar houses. It's a really interesting place. And there's more places, like there's a Chinatown. We have one in Brooklyn, down in Sunset Park, which is incredible. Other kind of cool street food places, if you go down to Red Hook, in the Red Hook ball fields, there's like great South American food every day of the week. There's great tacos that rival West Coast tacos, pupusas, ceviche, all this great stuff. You know, there's a lot of cool food and good things happening. I've been there for a long time.
My favorite place to go in Brooklyn is probably Prospect Park, just because it's a nice place to kind of get away from the chaos in the city. It's really easy to feel like a sensory overload when you're living in New York City. Just so much frenetic energy all the time. So going to a park and being able to like read a book or like sit under a cherry tree is pretty nice.
The first experience I had when I came to New York, my friends took me to the Brooklyn Bridge Park and Promenade, and you could see Manhattan lit up at night in all its glory, and it's beautiful. That's pretty much as far as it goes for me in sightseeing in Brooklyn. I don't really know too many other places, but that was pretty amazing. Little Mo's is definitely our go-to spot. It's right around the corner from Daptone on Myrtle, and they serve incredible Vietnamese food. Usually when we're recording, that's the spot that we'll go to. The food is unbelievable.
Yeah, they have like these rice bowls, and they have pho there too, but I usually go for the shorty rice bowl, which is like this like amazing like marinated steak thing that has like a fried egg in it.
We went so much during the recording of our album that they put our producer, Wayne Gordon, a Polaroid of him on the wall, because it's just like that's the only place we would visit. And they have canned wine and beer, which is a must for the mystery. So you have to have that. And oh yeah, if you ever go, get the Brussels sprouts. It's delicious and affordable.
So if you go to Brooklyn, you definitely need to get some pizza. One of my favorite places ever is this restaurant called Nice Pizza. They make this really good thin crust niçoise French style pizza. It's really good. It's not traditional Brooklyn, but it's a different version. You gotta get the sweet sausage with arugula or the anchovy caper pizzas, my favorite. They also have really cool decor, like old vintage rock and roll posters mixed with kind of French rustic vibe. Also, it's a really good place to watch a football match, like soccer, if you're into that. The owners are great. They really get into it. They really root for their teams and get you drunk and scream with you while you eat some awesome pizza.
My favorite restaurant in Brooklyn, that's a hard decision, but all-encompassing, I'd have to go with Roland Roaster. Now, it's called a not-so-fast fast food restaurant, which I think is an amazing tagline, but also it's untouched by time. Decor, seating, everything is the same as it's been since it opened. Waitresses wear great outfits. The roast beef is amazing, amazing atmosphere. And on top of all that, you get your cheese fries with a bottle of champagne. What more do you want?
Another really good spot in Brooklyn is Vanessa's Dumpling House. They have the cheapest, most delicious dumplings, and it's great late night drunk food, great sober food.
You got sesame pancakes, bubble tea, cheap ass wonton soup. Can't beat it. And you got Hyatt beer on tap for like $2.
One of our favorite places in Brooklyn to grab a bite is Snacky on Grand Street. They have amazing food and great sake. What more can you ask for?
Takoyaki is really good.
It's kind of like a Japanese, Korean, Chinese fusion place. It's like low lighting, good bar. Yeah, it's a cool chill place to visit if you're in Brooklyn.
I'm obsessed with Mexican food. I could eat it every meal of the day, every day probably. But in New York, it's really hard to come by a good taco. So my go-to spot is Tortilleria Mexicana Los Hermanos, which is in Bushwick off Jefferson. We all call it Tortilla Factory because it's basically just a Mexican cafeteria in a tortilla factory warehouse. You can just go BYOB. It's super cheap and amazing food. It's so good.
My favorite restaurant is White Castle, and there are numerous locations throughout Brooklyn. But my favorite restaurant that's only in Brooklyn would be Bamonte's, which is in Williamsburg. It's like stepping back in time. It's like walking into a movie Goodfellas by Martin Scorsese or Mean Streets. It's the most amazing atmosphere, everything on the wall, the waiters wear these red vests.
Great old school New York Italian food.
Oh yeah, they serve food also, but it's really the atmosphere that makes it. Love it. Bamonte's, great experience.
If you go, make sure you get a martini at the front bar while you're waiting for your table. I guarantee one of the best martinis in Brooklyn, without a doubt.
That's right.
Other places that are good in Brooklyn, I would say Shion Famous Foods. They have the best lamb burger you'll ever have in your life.
Well, actually, Brooklyn is the king of used record stores. There are probably 5 in my neighborhood. My favorite is Co-op 87. It's really close to me. Great atmosphere, friendly. You know, people there, they love when you come in and browse. And, you know, it's not just the rock and roll. They got jazz and arts and crafts and ragga rock and you know, acid rock, everything you kids like to listen to. Sample and put into your DJ mixes. And anyway, check it out, Co-op 87.
You gotta hit up Punk Alley and check out the best record store in Brooklyn, and it's Rebel Rouser.
That's where we're at right here, right now. That's run and curated by two good pals of mine, Mr. Josh Stiles, and also the artist Avi Spivak. These guys are two of my favorite DJs in Brooklyn, and I know a lot of stuff that they play at their nights. Well, you can find stocked in here.
They have great 45s there. You can find really great glam, rock and roll, punk stuff there. I love going there. You just have to see it.
Also has a lot of great curiosities and rock and roll ephemera. I highly recommend the place.
Definitely a cool spot to go to if you want to pick up some knickknacks or some records.
Academy Records in Brooklyn is one of my favorite places to go to. It's been around forever. Their recently added section is always the shit. And they have good new releases, so check it out.
Norton Records is responsible for rock and roll as I know it. Billy Miller and Miriam Lenner are two of the most influential rock and rollers that I've come across while living in Brooklyn. They have a fantastic label, and their new Norton Records store has just the best early rock and roll, rhythm and blues, rockabilly, most wild and frantic records you're gonna find, and they're two of the best people. I highly recommend stopping into Norton Records.
Anyone who's a fan of Norton Records knows the purity of their vision of rock and roll and R&B and wild, eccentric maniacs throughout time, you know, and now that they open a store, you can just go there and expect to find the same stuff all in one place. So yeah, it's fantastic for any real rock and roll fans out there.
Record Grouch is another good record store. They got a good dollar bin and other stuff. The owner is grouchy. That's why they call him the Record Grouch.
For a shopping experience in Brooklyn, I would say come to the Flea Market Alley, also known as Punk Alley, on Broadway here in beautiful Bushwick / Bed-Stuy. We're in Rebel Rouser right now, one of the stores with all your musical needs, record-wise. Next door we have a great bookstore. There's also Street Fever amongst a plethora of other little shops. And if you want, you go right down the block and buy some K2.
One cool thing to see if you're around Fort Greene on a Saturday is the Brooklyn Flea. They have a bunch of antiques, vintage furniture, some records, vintage clothing, weird old toys, like basically any kind of weird trinket that you can possibly imagine. And there's also couple of little food kiosks. If your kid's in the mood for a lobster roll, you have fancy children. Popsicles, bicycles, tricycles, things like that. It's a good way to spend a Saturday. Brooklyn has a lot of great vintage and thrift shops. Some of our favorite vintage shops are Worship, Monk Vintage, Fox and Fawn. I like Beacon's Closet. There's 2 locations, one in Greenpoint that's massive, and then there's another one in Bushwick. You can actually bring clothes in for trade there, so that's pretty cool. You can get rid of some of your old stuff, trade it in for new stuff.
The Jalopy Theater in Red Hook is my favorite venue to see live music in. They have a lot of great blues, folk, and gospel 7 nights a week. The best night to go there is the Wednesday night, Roots and Ruckus night, put on by my friend Farrell Foster. They have popcorn and beer. You can sit in the church pews and stomp your feet along to the music. If you're not digging the sounds, you can go next door to the Jalopy Tavern, get a shot of whiskey. A lot of times after the shows are over at Jalopy Theater, they'll kind of spill into the Jalopy Tavern, and that'll turn into an all-night hootenanny.
I'd say Baby's all right. It's a good venue to go and play at. I mean, the sound system's amazing. Always good sound system.
You can still go and see pretty awesome bands play there.
It's ran by our buddies Zach, Ben, and Billy. I dig it a lot. And they have this really cool light situation behind the bands that I think is really cool.
One of our favorite venues in Brooklyn is Union Pool.
It's in my neighborhood. It's a small venue. Usually gets smaller indie bands, smaller touring bands, so mostly it's local bands.
They have an awesome venue, a great outdoor area, amazing taco truck in the back. If you smoke cigarettes, it's pretty awesome because you can kind of go on the patio and chill there. There's 3 bars, so that's always good.
I just think it's a comfortable place, and hey, it's convenient for me, and what's more important than that?
Shea Stadium is great. It's one of the last standing DIY venues in Brooklyn. Most of them have closed at this point. But I really like going to shows there because it feels like a house party vibe when you go there. You know, the sound is good. You can hear all the amps. Like, it's a fun place to go to a show. It gets pretty rowdy, and it's an all-ages venue as well. Yeah.
I once jumped off a monitor and a nail stabbed in between my toes. Yeah. It's a pretty fond memory.
We're always at the Gutter because it's right next to our practice space, and it's a really great bar. Also, you can bowl there. They have shows. Yeah, the bartenders are awesome. They play great music. It's cheap. It just has a great atmosphere. It's great.
Our Wicked Lady is a new bar in Bushwick, actually ran by the man who co-produced and engineered our latest record, Wayne Gordon, and his partners, Zach, Keith, and Kinney. And they got a nice rooftop where they do live shows, dance parties, and they even began doing like movie nights, which is really cool. Yeah, it's awesome. We actually were the first band to play there, to christen the place. I take pride in that.
Yeah, Our Wicked Lady, or Owl as people now call it, it's pretty cool what they're doing over there. It's definitely a progressive approach to a bar and venue. They're kind of doing a lot of different things, like obviously all the events, but they also have like band rehearsal spaces that's built in, great drink program. They have like frozen daiquiris that are amazing.
The independent food vendors are amazing. Like, it's not even drunk food at all. They make really good specialty cocktails. And I'm not a cocktail type guy, but I'll make an exception for their cocktails.
And aside from that, they also get great guests to come in, like DJs and musical guests, performers all the time. It's a good spot to just go, like, pretty much any night of the week. There's always something different happening there.
Clem's. It's like the Brooklyn Cheers. We're always there. One of us is always there, at least. It's one of those bars that you can go to by yourself and you'll know someone there. Bartender, our friend DJ there. Yeah, any night of the week.
Capri Social Club, known to the local folks as Murphy's. That's my local pub, and you can go in there during the day. It's really quiet, have a pint. In the nighttime, things get a little bit wild in there. The drinks are ultra cheap, and they have Jell-O shots. And the jukebox is actually really good. They've got a lot of good 50s and 60s rock and roll. There's always a lot of characters and strange old men in there who will regale you with stories of the old days in Brooklyn.
One of our favorite bars to go to in the neighborhood is Turkey's Nest.
Turkey bar!
It's been around for a really long time. It's kind of like a cop bar. They got stiff drinks. Jesus Christ. You can play pool. You can't go there if you're under 23. You don't take any shit. You can go on the jukebox and play your Thin Lizzy or your Life of Agony.
If you're in Red Hook and you're looking for a bar, I would definitely say Bait and Tackle. It's a staple of the area and just a great bar. The decor, the atmosphere, everything, and it's fantastic. Type of place you go in for a few hours, you kind of get lost, forget you're in the city. And plus there's an amazing bartender there named Spencer.
I just have one more thing to let you know. They closed Brooklyn last week. No more visitors. Sorry. Stay away.